Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome, Sawadee Krap. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group. I'll explain to you guys what that is when we get to it. We're going to start our class with a meditation, and then we're going to move into some learning about the teachings of the Buddha. What the Buddha did is he figured out how to get to enlightenment by himself. What enlightenment is it's a mental state that you attain in this life where your mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't experience any more discontent feelings. You never experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others have been eliminated from the mind. And that comes through training of the mind. And meditation is one aspect of the training that the Buddha taught, but there's other aspects of his training as well. But we start each class with a meditation because it helps you to learn a bit about the teachings of the Buddha and to train your mind. So I'm going to be starting with what's called breathing mindfulness meditation. And then afterwards, I'll get into our class and helping you guys to understand what it is that you can learn today if you would like to learn. The way that I start with meditation is I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. If you would like to see these chants, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get one because we're going to be chanting those. And if people would like to chant along, you're more than welcome to chant. For anybody who's online, if you would like to see these chanting sheets, you can go to buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then you can scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see the chanting sheets there. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory because everything that he taught was oral. During his lifetime, the technology didn't exist to write the teachings down. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally in order to commit them to memory. So there isn't anything mystical or magical here about chanting. This isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship or anything like that. It's not prayer or anything like that. It's really today to help us ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was used in order to commit the teachings to memory because they didn't write things down because the technology didn't actually exist. He was teaching within an oral tradition where everything was taught orally. If you read the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself because a Buddha would have eliminated their ego. They wouldn't have arrogance. They wouldn't walk around putting themselves above other people. Instead, they would be humble because they would have eliminated their ego and their arrogance. So I suspect that his students created these either during his life or after his death, because if you learned from a teacher how to move from the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all those other discontent feelings, and that teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's where I suspect that these chants actually came from, is his actual students. After the chanting, you're going to hear me coming in with some guidance to guide you during the meditation, just for a period of time, kind of instructing you and guiding you during the meditation, helping you understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here and anyone joining us online will just all be meditating at the same time together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these at different times. And you would need to learn these as part of your journey to enlightenment. But oftentimes people are starting off in the seated position. So I'll give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position just to kind of help you out. And then at some future time, you can learn with me, if you'd like, all these other positions. So there isn't just one fixed way for everybody to sit. If that was the case, then everybody would be experiencing permanence where everybody's body is a bit different. So we're not going to all be comfortable in exactly the same position. So it's not about putting your body in exactly the same position. It's about finding what's comfortable for you. So the things that I share with you are just suggestions that you might consider as part of your practice to be able to help you get more comfortable. So if you're sitting on the floor, you might sit with some cushions under your rear. This will help make the seat a little bit softer. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, oftentimes people do that very lightly so that the circulation can flow in the lower body. Otherwise, you get pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and again allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap, and he sat this way during meditation. But there's other options here too. It's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because not everyone's going to find this to be comfortable. So some other options are, you might decide to put your palms on your thighs or your knees. Some people like to put their palms up. Some people rest them comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. And for anybody who's sitting in a chair, we have chairs here if anybody needs a chair, or maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair or something like that, you can sit however you're comfortable as well. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles. Those are all options for you. But you can see I'm sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so that's an option as well. And then the same thing for anybody sitting in a chair or a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair. You can put your hands and arms wherever you like, whatever feels comfortable for you. It's helpful if the upper body is erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from your mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in your mind. So it's helpful if your mind is attentive and alert during the meditation. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. It'll also help you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start us off with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'm going to come back in with the guidance to be able to help you during the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatavat Manusanam Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start focusing the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind focused on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Putang Mahakawanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anuttero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Sawadee Kap. So this individual that we refer to as the Buddha, he lived over 2,500 years ago. He lived in the year he was born in the year 563 BCE. And then he got to enlightenment at the age of 35. As I was mentioning at the beginning of class, getting to enlightenment is to train your mind to get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where you no longer experience any of those discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others have been uprooted and eliminated from the mind. There are certain causes and conditions that are producing these feelings within your own mind. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are being caused by other people or something external, but what you can see in the teachings of the Buddha and independently verify is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. That's why the Buddha was able to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, because he trained his mind and he uprooted certain pollutions that he discovered in the mind. There's these 10 individual pollutions that he figured out that were in the mind, and when you uproot those and eliminate those out of the mind, that's what's going to produce the enlightened mental state. So it's through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that an individual gradually trains their mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And having eliminated those pollutions, the mind will be performing optimally. You'll notice that there's focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease because you won't be bitter and harsh and hostile any longer in your relationships. You have probably a certain amount of that in certain relationships, maybe with your parents or your siblings or your life partner or your children or people like this, people that are close to you. You probably have a certain amount of bitterness and harshness and hostility, but that is coming from your own mind, and you can actually eliminate that through training of the mind. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even be experiencing a bad mood any longer. So the Buddha got to this enlightened mental state at the age of 35, and then he taught for the next 45 years other people how to actually get to this enlightened mental state. And during that 45-year teaching career, countless people were getting to enlightenment during that time frame. And he died at the age of 80. He died in the year 483 BCE. And during his lifetime, everything that he taught was oral. He just spoke, and people learned what it was that he was teaching. And as I mentioned, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. So there isn't anything mystical or magical with the chanting. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. You can't pray your way to enlightenment. Even if you've been exposed to things like this that were being referred to as Buddhism, the Buddha actually never taught any rites or rituals or ceremony or worship. His teachings aren't based in belief. It's about learning, growing, and developing as a human being, discovering this better way of life, cultivation of wisdom. So what the Buddha invites you to do is learn, examine, and investigate his teachings, then reflect on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and actually training of your mind. So even though during his lifetime everything was oral because that's all that existed, the technology that we needed in order to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. He taught in what we refer to as Northeast India. The technology to write things down existed in China, but it didn't exist in Northeast India. Now, you probably don't see writing something down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, that was technology to write things down, right? So after he died, that technology made its way to that region of the world, and people did write down what it is that he had to share during his lifetime. There were countless people that had gotten to enlightenment, and having gotten to enlightenment, you'll never forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. That will be deeply in your mind, and you'll have deep wisdom of what it took for you to get to enlightenment. So after his death, about 500 enlightened beings came together and they documented what it is that he actually taught. And we refer to this today as the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is the largest, most complete collection of the words of the Buddha and his teachings that lead to enlightenment that we actually have. They're assembled in 45 large volumes of books that are about this thick. And that has been translated from the Pali language into other languages nowadays. So that Pali language is no longer a spoken language today. So we've translated it into, for us, English. So we have English books that have consolidated this Pali Canon into a smaller, more manageable amount of material that you can actually learn and understand and make your way to enlightenment. A Buddha can get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, but everybody else is going to need teachers and guides to help them on the path. And you're not a Buddha, so you're going to need guidance from a teacher to be able to help and guide you along the path. It's very rare to have a Buddha in the world. Nowadays, there's some people that will tell you that everybody is a Buddha, but this isn't actually true. The Buddha never actually said that. He shared that it's very rare for there to be a Buddha in the world. So you're going to need guidance from teachers to be able to help you, but it's your journey to enlightenment. A teacher is essentially like a tour guide pointing out for you the things that you need to learn, but it's you doing the work to grow and develop and cultivate wisdom. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die, right? It's not about rules and commandments or things like this. It's not about people telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. It's about you learning and growing and developing as a human being, cultivating wisdom about what's called the natural laws of existence. You're learning about these natural laws in the world and about how this natural world works. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you will struggle and you will have difficulties. That's what we experienced when we were a little kid. We didn't understand the natural law of gravity, so we struggled and we had difficulties. We fell down, we hurt ourselves, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, we might have started bleeding from our knees when we fell down and hurt ourselves. And during this period of time, we cried and cried, we were upset because we didn't understand the world that we lived in, and we really struggled and had difficulties. But slowly but surely, we learned about this natural law of gravity. We cultivated wisdom about it. We didn't believe in the natural law of gravity. We saw the truth for ourselves. We can see, there it is. We can see the natural law of gravity, and we started learning how to navigate this world more peacefully and more harmoniously with this natural law. We started learning to tie our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We started being able to climb ladders and ride bicycles and get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we had fully awoke, or another way to say that is we fully cultivated wisdom about this natural law of gravity. And now we navigate the world without any difficulties or struggles with that natural law of gravity. Well, there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And if you don't have wisdom of these natural laws, you will struggle. You'll have difficulties. That's what the stress is. That's what the anxiety is. That's what the anger and the frustration and all these other feelings. That's the mind struggling because it lives in a world that it doesn't understand. And now when you navigate the world, you find it to be somewhat challenging or difficult in certain situations. So what the teachings of the Buddha are here for is to be able to help you learn these natural laws. You're not believing in them. You're learning, examining, and investigating them. You're reflecting on them to independently verify them. And then you're practicing them by making wise decisions in your day-to-day life. And I have various programs here that help students to be able to do that. This afternoon, I'm going to be teaching an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha. This is a great place for someone to start. Just 3 hours. I'm going to be introducing students to what the teachings of the Buddha are. I'm going to explain to you what the teachings of the Buddha are not. And then I'm going to be teaching the very first teaching of the Buddha, the place where everybody starts. And that's a good place to actually start in your journey to enlightenment and understanding what he actually taught. On Sunday, I'm going to be teaching what's called our group learning program, which is like a more traditional style of learning. What we do is we go through this first book of our book series, and each Sunday I do chapter by chapter by chapter. We're in chapter 24 this week, which is titled Misunderstandings of the Teachings of the Buddha. And I'm going to be teaching that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and then at 9 p.m. I do it from my home. And there's all these misunderstandings in the world that you might have actually been exposed to some of those things. If you've been taught to pray to the Buddha, or you've been taught ceremonies or rituals or things like this, these are all misunderstandings of what the Buddha taught. So I'm going to be going through those in a way that you can independently verify and see the truth on tomorrow, on Sunday. Yeah. And then on Monday, I'm going to be starting a 5-day Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, where over the 5-day period from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. with an hour-and-a-half lunch break, I'm going to be teaching all the foundational teachings that someone would need in order to really get onto the path to enlightenment and making their way to this enlightened mental state where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And all this is available to you at no cost. The books, the videos, the podcasts, the classes, the courses, retreats, personal guidance from me. You can get all the help you need on this journey to enlightenment. What today is about, today is our Pali Canon and English study group. What we do on Saturdays is all those other books, volumes 2 through 13 of our book series, we study those over the course of a year and a half. That on Saturdays, students come together and we do more of a study group, where all the other classes and programs and courses and retreats that I teach, it's more of a traditional style of learning, where I will be teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions, teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions. We do this Pali Canon and English study group a little bit different. That oftentimes students have already studied in a foundational program, which I know many of you guys haven't, and that's okay. You'll learn plenty today if you'd like to stick around and learn. But oftentimes people have already learned in a foundational program, and now they come into this program in order to be able to kind of fill out their framework, where in the other programs you kind of create a framework or a foundation, and this program kind of helps you fill that in, where we study with the original words of the Buddha from the Pali Canon, but we study it in the English language. So the way that I do this program is for anybody here, anybody online, if you guys would like to volunteer to read a chapter, this is part of volume 9, and this is chapter 41. These chapters are actually quite short. You can see this one is like a page and kind of a quarter, right? What you've got here is you've got the original words of the Buddha. you've got a reference that takes you back to the Pali Canon so you can see where this comes from, because this is an excerpt out of his teachings. Then you've got words from me that are helping you understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life. And again, these books are all available at no cost for students. If you'd like to download them on our website, you can take it and go print it yourself. You can order it on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. And we also have them here. You can just reimburse us for the printing cost, and that'll help us to buy books for other people. So what I do is I invite a student here or in Zoom to be able to read this particular chapter. And then after someone reads the words of the Buddha, then I'll share some teachings on that, helping you to understand what it is that he's sharing with you. His teachings are very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it helps to have a dedicated practitioner and a dedicated teacher to guide you through as a tour guide, as I mentioned. It's your journey to enlightenment. And then after I share a little bit of teachings on that, I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to that chapter, and then we'll move on to the next chapter. If you would like to volunteer to read, or if you have a question, we have microphones here in the middle of the classroom in the white bowl there. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and you just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, the people online won't be able to actually hear you. And if you get a microphone, you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share it with the people around you. And for anyone in Zoom, if you would like to either volunteer to read, or if you would like to ask a question, you can just electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then you'll be able to speak, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. We'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream. If there's anyone in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom that has a question, you can put that into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. And for those of you here, if you would like to ask questions, if you could use the microphones, that would be great. So is there anybody that would like to volunteer to read this first chapter? I'll just kind of show you how this program works. Is there anyone here, anybody online that would like to volunteer to read? So, yes, ma'am. If you could come get a microphone up here, or if we could pass one back to her, either way. They're in a white bowl right here in the middle of the room. Doche's got you. There you go. And you can keep this microphone with you. It's over there. Yeah. You right there in the dress. Yeah. You just need to press the gray button on the mic. See the gray button on the microphone? If you press that, you'll see the lights come on. Just wait a second or two, and then it should be active.
Hello.
There you go.
Clear. Okay.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it
Perfect.
Clearly. One who is engaged in unliberated, one who is disengaged is liberated. Monks, one who is engaged is unliberated, one who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness, monks, while standing might stand unclear. Okay. Can I stand up?
Sure, you can do whatever you like. There's no rules here. Yeah.
Might stand engaged with form. Based up form, established up form with the sparkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and dysfunction. On consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with feeling. Based upon feeling, establish up feeling with the sparkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. All conscious, while standing, might engage with perception. Based up perception, established up participation. With a sparkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. On consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with volitional, functional choice, decisions, based up. Okay.
This is volitional formations. Volitional formation.
Volitional formations, yeah. Established up volitional formations. With a sparkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Monks, through someone might say, separated from form, separated from feeling, separated from perception, separated from validation formations. I will make nouns the coming and going of the consciousness. It's passing away and rebirth. Its growth, increase, and expansion is impossible. If a monk has abundant desire for the forms, aggregate, right?
Mm-hmm. Aggregate, yep.
Aggregate with the abandoning of craving, the bias is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. If he has abandoned desire for the feelings aggregate, for the perception aggregate, for the validations formations, for the consciousness aggregate, for the abandoning of craving, the bias is cutting off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When that consciousness is established, not coming to growth, non-generative, the mind is liberated. By being liberated, the mind is steady. By being steady, the mind is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personality attend. How to pronounce it?
Nibbana.
Nibbana.
Mm-hmm.
One understands this choice is birth. The holy life has been lived. What has been to done has been done. There is no more for this state of existence.
Yay, good job. All right. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to help you guys understand this piece by piece because, as I mentioned, oftentimes students are coming from other programs into this program, and they would understand, a good amount of this having studied in the foundational programs. First, let's talk about what unliberated and liberated means. When a mind is liberated, that means it's free. It's free from strong feelings. It doesn't experience the anger, the sadness, the frustration, all those discontent feelings, the stress, anxiety, guilt, shame, fear. The mind's free. It's liberated, right? But when the mind is unliberated, that means your mind is bound up. You still experience anger and annoyance and frustration and loneliness and boredom and sadness and grief and despair and displeasure and all these different feelings. Sure, you experience happiness here and there, but the mind in the unenlightened state, it's only a matter of time before you get frustrated or agitated or annoyed about something or another. So that's what liberated and unliberated is. Liberated is the mind is free. It's enlightened. It's been purified. It's not experiencing those discontent feelings. Unliberated, it's still experiencing those discontent feelings and other certain challenges and struggles as well. So what the Buddha is teaching you here is that being engaged, the mind is unliberated, and the one who is disengaged is liberated. What he's typically teaching you about is something called craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. This is what's causing the mind to be frustrated, agitated, annoyed, and all these other things. When your mind is longing, yearning, you're chasing after the objects of your affection, you're wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. If you get things your way, you will be happy, you will be excited. But when you don't get things your way, you experience painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance. This is what's causing the mind to experience discontent feelings. Is its craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, wanting, expecting things. Again, oftentimes the unenlightened mind thinks that it's something external that's causing these feelings. You think maybe your boss is making you angry, or your mom and dad are annoying you or frustrating you, or maybe your brothers and sisters are making you sad. This isn't actually true. What it is it's your mind wanting, expecting, craving, desiring, longing, yearning, wanting things things to be a certain way. And if you get things your way, again, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And then there's something called neither painful nor pleasant feelings. That's like shyness. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant, or maybe dissatisfaction or uncomfortableness. So the Buddha typically is using the words craving, desire, attachment, wants and expectations, things like that. But here he's using the word engaged to mean craving, desire, attachment, and unengaged or disengaged to mean non-craving or non-attachment, non-desire, right? So what he's saying is if your mind has craving, desire, attachment, it is unliberated, meaning you can only be happy when you get things your way. That if the weather is this, if my bank account is this, if my boss does this, if my mom and dad does this, if my boyfriend or girlfriend does this, then I'll be happy. But if those things aren't true, can't be happy, right? That's called unliberated. Your mind is not free. But when you get rid of craving, desire, attachment, when you eliminate the longing, yearning, and wanting and expecting things to be a certain way, your mind's liberated. It's free because you can be peaceful and joyful no matter how things are. If you can only be happy when it's sunny outside, well, the sun is not permanent. It is impermanent. So if you can only be happy when it's sunny outside, that means your happiness is temporary, right? If you can only be happy when your bank account balance is up here, then that means when it goes here, you can't be happy all the time. You'll be frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. But if you can train your mind to not have this craving, this desire, this longing, yearning, and wanting things to be a certain way, you can be happy when it's sunny outside. You're not happy because of the sun. You're just happy. And then when it's raining, you can still be happy. Right? If you can only be happy when it's sunny outside, you can only be happy for a limited period of time. You can be happy in the enlightened mental state when your bank account's here, but you can also be happy when it's here too, because you're not basing your happiness on this thing. If you're basing your happiness on something external, you can't experience permanent happiness. This is why you haven't been able to experience permanent happiness, because the unenlightened mind is basing its inner feelings on something external. And that external thing is impermanent. So that means your happiness is impermanent. So if you base your inner feelings on whether you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you're happy when you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, but when you don't have one, you're sad or frustrated. That means that you can't be happy all the time because you're not going to always have a boyfriend or girlfriend or a husband or wife. Even if you guys are together for the rest of your life, one of you are going to most likely die first. And it's not your love or your care that's causing that sadness or the grief. It's the mind craving permanence, wanting things to be permanent, but yet you live in an impermanent world. So the Buddha teaches you this in other teachings. So by the time you get here, what he's teaching you is something called the 5 aggregates and how the mind will cling to these and hold on to these. What the 5 aggregates are these are the 5 things that make a living being a living being. You can independently verify what I'm sharing with you, okay? Everything in the teachings of the Buddha is independently verifiable. You know you're a living being. So let's talk about what's called the 5 aggregates or the 5 collections or the 5 criteria. These are the 5 criteria that make a living being a living being. A living being is going to have physical form, right? Physical form, physical structures. A living being is going to have feelings like pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. A living being is going to have perceptions. These are your views and opinions about the world. You have certain views and opinions about the world. Then there's going to be volitional formations. This is choices and decisions. Essentially, a living being is going to have free will. Then there's going to be a consciousness. This is the mind itself. Okay, so every living being in the world, whether it's a human being or an animal, is going to have these 5 aggregates. Form, which is physical form. It's going to have feelings. It's going to have perceptions, which are views and opinions. It's going to have volitional formations, which are choices and decisions. And it's going to have a consciousness or a mind. Okay, and this is really helpful to understand the 5 aggregates, because anytime you cause harm to a living being, harm is going to come back to you. So if you understand what is a living being, then it can help inform you about how you navigate the world. Because if you cause harm to a living being, this harm is going to come back to you. And you're not interested in harm coming back to you, right? So understanding the 5 aggregates is going to help you with that. But what it also helps you with is your mind can cling to these 5 aggregates. You can hold on to them, wanting them to be permanent. And now you experience either pleasant feelings or painful feelings related to this. So for example, this physical form, if you cling to this, wanting it to be permanent, when you're youthful and you have handsome appearance or beautiful appearance, you'll be so happy. You look in the mirror like, wow, look at me. I'm so beautiful. I'm so handsome. Wow, this looks great, right? Maybe you're in your 20s or 30s, but then because of impermanence, that's all going to change, right? You're going to get wrinkles. You're going to get gray hair. You're going to start losing your hair. You're going to get an extra fat here and there, maybe a lot of extra fat here and there, right? Things are going to change about this body. Whereas if you cling to it and you want it to be permanent, now when you see that pimple or mole or that gray hair, you start losing your hair, you'll be shaken up by that. So if you allow your mind to get happy and pleasant feelings, when you look in the mirror and you see this certain physical form and it looks a certain way, you get happy about that. Well, when all that changes and you no longer have that youthful appearance, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated or annoyed. Same thing with your feelings or your perceptions or choices and decisions. Let's talk about perceptions, your views and opinions about the world. If you cling to your views and opinions and how you think that the world should be, well, when you're talking with people, you'll get in arguments, right? If someone agrees with your views and opinions, you'll be happy. You'll be excited. Like, hey, this is my friend. They agree with me. But now it's only a matter of time because of impermanence that someone is going to disagree with your views and opinions. And now your mind will struggle and you'll get angry and frustrated. You might argue with this person trying to convince them that you are right and they are wrong. So if you cling to your perceptions, your views and opinions about the world, it's only a matter of time before you get angry or frustrated, because you're going to find somebody at some point who disagrees with your views and opinions. Or let's take volitional formations, which are your choices or decisions about the world. Like say you had a choice that you were going to fly to Australia and you were going to spend time in Australia. Maybe it's a trip that you're going to take 6 months from now. Right? And now you're so excited to go to Australia. You just can't wait to go to Australia. But now you get closer and closer to the time frame and you show up to the airport and your flight is delayed or it's canceled, right? You'll be upset. You'll be angry. Well, the reason why the flight is delayed or canceled is because of impermanence. Not every single flight is going to take off as scheduled. There's going to be a crew issue, a maintenance issue, a weather issue. There's going to be some issue at some point that this plane is going to either be late, delayed, or it's going to get canceled, right? And if you have a craving, if you're clinging to your decision to go to Australia and you just can't wait to go, you're so excited to go, you'll be frustrated or annoyed when you show up and your flight's delayed or canceled. And it's not the airline company who's causing your frustration. And it's not the pilot who's causing your frustration. It's your own mind craving permanence, wanting every single plane to take off as scheduled. And this just isn't possible because you live in an impermanent world. So the Buddha is teaching you here that if you cling to any of these aggregates, if you cling to your physical form, to your feelings, to your perceptions, your views and opinions, to your choices and decisions, or to the mind itself, and I can give you examples of all 5 of these if you like, but I just touched on a couple. But if you cling to any of these things, your mind is engaged. You're clinging to these 5 aggregates. And it's only a matter of time before you're frustrated, angry, or annoyed, or some other discontent feeling. But if you are unengaged, meaning you've let go, and you realize like, hey, there is a physical body here, and let me take care of it as best as I can. Let me do things like, caring for the personal hygiene. Let me eat some decent food. Let me maybe do a little exercise. Let me go to the doctor from time to time. I will take care of this body, but you understand that it's impermanent. It's going to change. It cannot be permanently healthy. It's not possible. So if you understand that and you just make wise decisions to take care of it the best you can, now when you're sick or this body is sick, you're not upset. You understand? It's normal that this body is going to be sick. But if you crave permanent health, when this body is sick, you will be frustrated. But this is just normal. This body can't be permanently healthy. It's just not possible. But if you get grumpy or irritable or annoyed when you're sick, that's because your mind is craving permanent health, and it's just not possible. So what the Buddha teaches you is not to cling to any of these 5 aggregates, wanting them to be permanent, because they're always changing. They're always, being modified because of impermanence. Ultimately, what he gets down to here is he's saying separated from form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. If somebody says they will make known the passing away, rebirth, growth, increase, and expansion of an individual being, he says that's impossible. You can't just separate yourself from these things. Instead, what he's saying is you need to abandon the desire. You need to abandon the longing, yearning, and craving for these things to be permanent. And having abandoned the craving, desire, attachment for these things to be permanent, then the mind is liberated. Right here he says the mind is liberated, down here at the bottom. Then when the mind's liberated, meaning it's free, then the mind is steady. An enlightened mind is stable and steady. It's unshakable. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life, your mind won't be shaken up. Right now, if your mom died, maybe you would be sad or frustrated. Or if she has died, maybe you would be sad or frustrated, right? Or maybe you would be lonely or bored, right? What's shaking that mind up is that the mind's craving and wanting this permanence, where your mom is not permanent and other things in your life is not permanent. Maybe if you lost your job, maybe your mind would be shaken up. That's the mind craving and holding on to this job or the money or your coworkers, or maybe you have a nice office. Maybe you're clinging to those things, wanting them to be permanent. And now when your mind has to let go of them, the mind is not willing to do that. It's holding on. So it'll be shaken up during that period of time. But if your mind's not holding on and you just know, like, hey, this job is impermanent, I'm going to do the very best I can do every day I go to work. But at some point, you're not going to be doing that job anymore. It's understandable because it's impermanent. So if your mind isn't holding on, craving for this job to be permanent, when the company goes out of business or they lay you off, or you retire or something like that, you'll be completely comfortable with that. You'll understand this is just impermanence. Let me go find another job, or let me go do something else. So your mind can be steady and stable and unshakable. When the mind is steady, it's content. It's peaceful. It's joyful. When the mind is content, it's not agitated. It's not frustrated. This is the liberated mind that the Buddha is talking about. Being unagitated, the mind has attained enlightenment. That's what the Buddha is explaining. This is how the Buddha is explaining enlightenment in very basic terms, helping you understand that an enlightened being's mind is steady, it's content, and it's unagitated. Right? This is part of the qualities of enlightenment. And having gotten to enlightenment, not only will you know that in this life, because you'll see your mind becoming more and more peaceful, you know in situations where you are angry and frustrated and agitated and annoyed, when you're learning and training in these teachings and you're having those exact same situations, but your mind is steady and stable, you'll know that your mind is enlightened. And it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You won't have any anger. You won't have any frustration. You'll know that your mind is enlightened. And having gotten to enlightenment, the other thing that you will know is that there's not going to be any rebirth. That's why he says destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived, meaning you've lived this holy life, purifying your mind, getting to this wholesomeness. What had to be done has been done, meaning you've done the training. You've done what you needed to do in this life. There is no more for this state of existence, meaning when you die from this existence, you're not coming back over and over and over again. As I shared, all the teachings of the Buddha, they're not based in belief. You can independently verify every single aspect of his teachings, including the cycle of rebirth. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence of that. other than the fact that maybe right now you can't remember your past lives. But when you start training your mind and you start lifting this pollution out of your mind, you might actually start observing your past lives. You might start noticing that you have memories. You might have already, for some of you might have already started having memories of your past lives at different times, and you might just not be connecting these things. There's actually 17 different criteria where you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth through evidence that you have available to you. This is in our book series. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have the 17 different criteria that you can use to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because it's not something you need to do right up front. There's other teachings that you would need to learn and grow and develop in order to be able to make your way on the path to enlightenment. But just understand that this cycle of rebirth, the Buddha will talk about it from time to time because it's the truth. It is what's actually occurring. And if you understand that, then when you start having memories of your past lives, you won't be shaken up by that. You'll understand that that's what it is. Okay? So the Buddha is teaching you to not be engaged or not to cling to the five aggregates, not to cling to the physical form, to your feelings. Like when you're happy, don't cling to that because it's temporary in the unenlightened state. If you cling to your happiness, when you're feeling sad, you'll feel even more miserable. Don't cling to your perceptions, your views and opinions. You have certain views and opinions, but you don't have to convince other people of those. There's no reason why you have to go out in the world and convince other people what you think about the world. There's just no obligation about that whatsoever. And if you're doing that, that's like carrying around a burden, that you have to go out into the world and convince other people what you think about the world. You don't have to carry that burden. You can lay that burden down, not engaged or cling to your perceptions. And the same thing with your volitional formations or your choices and decisions. You don't need to justify your choices and decisions to other people. And then the same thing with the consciousness or the mind itself. We didn't talk too much about that, but if you guys have questions about it, just let me know and I'll explain it to you about how an individual can cling to that. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Remember, online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom. Or here, you guys can ask questions using the microphones. Do you guys have any questions you would like to ask about this chapter? No questions? Okay. So now, let's go to the next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this one? This is chapter 42. Yes, sir. Yeah. If you could get a microphone, yeah.
Hello, hello.
Mm-hmm.
Without excitement, the three underlying tendencies are abandoned. Monks, depending on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact are as condition, there arises is feeling. Felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, dependent on the ear and sounds. Ear consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, depending on the nose and odors. Nose consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the body, dependent on the tones and the flavors, tongue consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as a condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the body and the physical objects, body consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as a condition, there arises felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the mind and mental objects, mind consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as a condition, there arises felt as pleasant or painful or neither painful nor pleasant. When one is touched by a pleasant feeling, if one does not excite in it, welcome it, and remain holding to it, then the underlying tendency to crave does not lie within one. When one is touched by a painful feeling, if one does not sorrow, grieve, and have displeasure, does not weeping, beating one's breast, and become distraught, then the underlying tendency to aversion does not lie within one. When one is touched by a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, if one understands as it actually is, the cause, the disappearance, the great gratification, the danger, and the escape in regard to that feeling, then the underlying tendency is ignorance, and knowing of true reality does not lie within one. Monks, that one shall hear and now make an end of this contentedness by abandoning the underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feeling, by abolishing the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings, by destroying the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feelings, by abandoning ignorance and arousing true wisdom. That is possible.
Okay, thank you, sir. I guess we'll give you a clap too. Yay. All right. Okay, so the Buddha is teaching here about what's called the three underlying tendencies, and these need to be abandoned or eliminated or removed from the mind. These are also referred to as the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. This is craving, anger, and ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. We'll talk about those here more in a minute. What the Buddha is talking about here at the beginning is he's talking about what's called the 6 sense bases. This is why this is in volume 9, because volume 9 is titled the 6 sense bases. What the Buddha is teaching you about here is he's teaching you something called sensual desire. What sensual desire is your mind in the unenlightened state has this longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanently pleasing. And you're longing, yearning through your sense bases. Your sense bases are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha are here to guide you in understanding this world. And part of understanding this world is understand this being who you are. You have these 6 senses, and these are like doorways to how you experience contact with the outside world. That you have eyes, and it sees certain physical forms. You have ears that hear certain sounds. You have a nose that smells certain odors. You have a tongue that tastes certain flavors. You have a physical body that comes in contact with physical objects. And then you have a mind that has certain mental objects or thoughts or ideas or things of this nature. And based on this contact that's coming through these doorways, if you have craving, if you have desire, if you have a longing, yearning, you're going to see that contact as either agreeable or you're going to see it as disagreeable. And if you have agreeable contact through these senses, you will experience pleasant feelings based on the condition that you're having agreeable contact. But if you have disagreeable contact, you will experience painful feelings. You will be averse to this. You will push this away. You will be angry or frustrated or agitated. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings as well. So let me give you some examples of this so you can see what I'm talking about. If you're sitting at a traffic light in your car and somebody pulls up to you with some music that you hear through the ear, there's a certain sound, and you hear that sound and you find it agreeable. Maybe this is music that you particularly like. You might be dancing in your seat. You might be having a good time. You're like, yeah, all right, that's some good music. All right. Having all these pleasant feelings based on the condition of hearing a sound that is agreeable to you. Now you get all these pleasant feelings. But then the light turns green, you pull up to the next traffic light, and someone else pulls up to you with a different type of music. And now you hear that sound and you find it to be disagreeable. And now you get frustrated, you get agitated, the mind is angry. It's not the music that's causing that. What's causing it is the mind is craving for permanently agreeable contact through the senses, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. And now when you hear this sound that you find to be disagreeable, now you're angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. This is the mind causing this itself. And the same thing is happening through all these sense bases. Right? Say you're walking down the street and you smell some flowers coming out of the flower shop, or you smell someone's perfume or cologne. You might be like, oh, wow, that smells really good. Wow. And you get all these pleasant feelings. But now you walk a few more steps and you smell the sewer coming up. And you're repulsed by it and you want to push it away. This is called aversion. Okay, so this is happening through all these individual sense bases. That's what the Buddha is explaining to you, that the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. I'll explain to you the mind itself because I think the other ones are pretty straightforward for you, like the flavors on the tongue. This is where you see certain foods, you really like them, and then other foods, you dislike them and you try to stay away from them. That's because of your sensual desire, your mind seeing things as agreeable or disagreeable. The things that are coming through the mind, let's just say you've had some situation in the past that you found to be particularly enjoyable. And now in the present moment, you're longing, yearning for that thing to occur again. And now in the present moment, you might be having pleasant feelings just thinking about that thing in the past, right? Or maybe you had something very painful happen to you in the past. And now in the present moment, you're thinking about that thing. And now you experience painful feelings in the present moment based on something in the past. And what the Buddha is explaining to you is that it's contact that's causing these things, that this is a prerequisite. It's craving, desire, attachment, as he's explaining, but there needs to be contact through the sense bases. There needs to be some kind of input into the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself in order for you to experience these discontent feelings. So when there is the internal sense base, let's just take the tongue, for example. The tongue is what's called the internal sense base. The flavor is the external sense base. And now when that comes together, when the tongue and this flavor comes together, this is referred to as tongue consciousness. What that means is the mind is now aware of this flavor that's hit the tongue. And that's what he's referring to as contact. When there's a tongue, when there's a flavor, and then the mind becomes aware of that flavor, those three things is called contact. You've now had contact with something in this world. And now when there's contact, the mind can experience either pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, if there is craving, desire, attachment in the mind. That's what he's getting to down here. He says, when touched by a pleasant feeling, if one does not excite in it, one welcomes it, remains holding to it, then the underlying tendency to crave does not lie within one, right? So let's just say I'm eating a piece of chocolate cake and it's like, oh, wow, that's a really good piece of chocolate cake. Wow, that's quite nice, right? If you don't allow the mind to get all excited, then you won't crave it. Whereas if you get all excited, like, oh my goodness, this is the best chocolate cake I've ever had. Oh my goodness, I got to come back here tomorrow and get some more chocolate cake. This is the mind longing, yearning, and craving. And now when you come into the restaurant, if they have your chocolate cake, you'll get so excited and you'll get so happy. But this chocolate cake is not permanent. It is impermanent. So if you come to this restaurant tomorrow and they don't have your chocolate cake, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated or annoyed. And that's your craving, your desire, your attachment, wanting and longing, yearning for it. So the Buddha is saying, if you don't allow this pleasant feeling that's coming up in the mind, if you don't excite in it, if you don't welcome it, if you don't remain holding on to it, then you won't develop a craving, desire, attachment. that you can enjoy this chocolate cake, but don't allow your mind to crave it and long and yearn for it, because that's where you're setting yourself up. That's where you're sabotaging your mind. That if you start longing and yearning for this chocolate cake, that means you can only be happy when you've got it. And when you don't have it, you can't be happy, right? So you would like to learn how to enjoy the taste of the chocolate cake and eat it without getting a conditioned, pleasant feeling where the mind is so happy and so excited. Because when one is touched by painful feelings, if you sorrow, grief, or you have displeasure, and this is an interesting little analogy here, does not weep, beating one's breast. Oh, why me? Oh, it's so painful to experience this, and become distraught, then the underlying tendency to aversion does not lie within one. So if you come into the restaurant and they don't have your chocolate cake, and they're like, oh, sorry, ma'am, sorry, sir, I don't have your chocolate cake today. No worries. Right? I'll be okay. Do you have apple pie? Do you have some fruit? Oh, you don't have any of that stuff? Okay, I don't need dessert anyway. I'm just fine. Right? You can just be calm and peaceful. But if you're doing these things where you have sorrow, grief, and displeasure, where you're weeping and beating your breast, then you're going to have aversion where you're like, I'm never going to that restaurant again. They're so unorganized. They don't even have my chocolate cake anymore. Oh, I'm going to give them a 1-star Google review. There's no way I'm going back to that place ever again. Everyone's got to know how horrible of an experience I had at this restaurant. Where in reality, this is all happening within your own mind. Your mind was just craving this chocolate cake and they didn't have it. And you just showed up and you experienced some impermanence. This is the impermanent nature of the world. But if you crave permanence, when you show up and they don't have your chocolate cake, you'll think it's the worst restaurant ever. And you'll try to push it away. That's what aversion is, where the mind is averse to this and is pushing away. You might have experienced this in your personal life. You might have friends or family members where in their presence, something occurred where you had contact through your sense bases and you got angry, you got frustrated, and you might have firmly believed that other people were causing you to be angry and frustrated. And you might have pushed that person away. You might have pushed them out of your life. Maybe a coworker or a friend or family member or something like this. And you can see that that didn't solve your problem. Because if that solved your problem, you wouldn't get angry or frustrated or annoyed any longer. But you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. That's how you know that's not the problem. Because if you push this person out of your life, if that was the true cause of your problem, you'd be peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. But you can still see you get angry, you get frustrated, you get agitated or annoyed because that's not the true problem. Sure, they might have done something that was unwise, but that's not what caused you to be angry or frustrated. So when you're experiencing painful feelings, because you will experience them in the unenlightened state, by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience painful feelings. But right now, when you're having painful feelings, when you're noticing that arising, if you don't allow your mind to reside in that sorrow and the grief and the displeasure, then you can get to a point where you can transform your mind. The Buddha gives you teachings, not here, but in other places, of how to transform your mind so it no longer experiences any painful feelings. But right now, if you don't have that wisdom, you don't understand what that training is. And then he talks here where he's helping you to understand the training that you need if you understand what these things are. He says that when you're touched by neither painful nor pleasant feeling, if one understands as it actually is the cause of your feelings is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the sensual desire, craving for things to be permanently agreeable to you. When in fact, you need to understand the disappearance. What the disappearance is whatever this thing is that you're holding on to, that you're getting happiness from, it's going to disappear. It's not permanent. So as long as you allow your mind to get happiness based on this thing, when it disappears, you're not going to be happy anymore. So you need to understand the cause of your discontent feelings is craving, desire, attachment, craving permanence. You need to understand the disappearance, that everything around you is impermanent. You can independently verify this, that things are constantly changing around you. You need to understand the gratification. What the gratification is that the mind is chasing pleasant feelings. It's wanting things to be permanently agreeable to you, that the mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanently gratifying or pleasant. And this just isn't possible. Then you need to understand the danger. The danger is if you allow your mind to get gratification out of some particular thing, when that thing disappears, you're going to be experiencing painful feelings. So this is where you need to learn how to enjoy things without clinging to it and holding on to it. So many of you guys are here in Thailand as a tourist maybe, and maybe you're visiting, and maybe you're having a great time having mango and sticky rice, right? Thai massage, go to visit elephants, right? Maybe you're seeing some dancing and Thai music. Maybe you're going to the beach and having a great time. Oh, it's wonderful. Enjoy yourself. But at some point, it's going to be over. And you're going to need to go back to wherever you came from. And you're going to spend time in that place. Well, if your mind is clinging to what you experienced here, when you go back home, you'll feel miserable. Right? It's like, oh, I have to leave. I had so much fun. So this situation, this experience is impermanent. You're going to need to understand that, right? So if you allow your mind to just chase this gratification, the danger in that is that when you don't have whatever it is that you have, you're going to be frustrated and agitated or annoyed, experiencing painful feelings. That's the danger. The escape from all of this is what's called the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete, perfect plan that the Buddha created based on his own mind and his own mind's training of how to escape out of all of this, where you don't keep experiencing anger and frustration and annoyment and all these other discontent feelings over and over and over again. There's an escape. But right now, if you don't know his teachings on the Eightfold Path, you wouldn't understand what the escape is. So I'm going to be starting that this afternoon at 1 o'clock. I'm going to be teaching you the very first step of the Eightfold Path. And then on Tuesday, in next week's course, Monday through Friday, on Tuesday, I'm going to explain the entire Eightfold Path using the words of the Buddha so you can understand the escape of how to get out of these painful feelings where you don't have to keep experiencing anger and frustration and loneliness and boredom and guilt and shame and fear over and over and over again. So there's an escape for that. And the way that you get to that is you eliminate what's called ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. The way you eliminate ignorance or the unknowing of true reality is to cultivate wisdom. That's why the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. You don't know what's true. You don't know what's false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. But by the time you get to wisdom, you know the truth. And that's what the Buddha's teachings are there for you, is to help you learn, examine, and investigate his teachings, to then reflect on them, to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice them, integrating them into your life. And perhaps some of the things that I've been sharing today, you can see through your own direct experience that I'm describing to you what it is that you experience on a day-to-day basis. That if you get what you want, you experience pleasant feelings like you're happy. But if you don't get what you want, you get angry or frustrated. Because you can take a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed, and you can look at it and you can see that there was something you wanted. And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But since you didn't get what you wanted, you got angry or frustrated or annoyed. Right? You can look at maybe today or yesterday or last week, something that's happened in your life, and you can independently verify this. And that's what it means to cultivate wisdom. That you don't believe me, you don't believe the books that I write, you don't believe these words of the Buddha. You cultivate wisdom about what it is that your mind's doing. Because once you understand what your mind's doing in the cause of this problem of anger and sadness and frustration, then you can actually fix it. But if you don't understand what's causing it, if you keep pushing people away out of your life, you'll never solve your anger that way. Or if you're bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, trying to fear them to do things your way, you'll never solve your anger. You'll still be angry the rest of your life. Or if you put your expectations on people and try to control people and force them to do things your way, you'll never solve your anger. So the Buddha is helping you understand what the problem is within your own mind, the cause of that problem, how to eliminate it, and how to actually solve this through his teachings. Because what he's sharing down here is that somebody can make an end to discontentedness. He's talking to his monks. You can end this discontentedness by abandoning the underlying tendency to crave, wanting things to be permanently agreeable, craving those pleasant feelings, by abolishing the underlying tendency to aversion, where you're pushing people away and you're pushing a situation away, by destroying the underlying tendency to ignorance. The way you do that is through cultivation of wisdom, by cultivating wisdom about the natural laws. And then when you do that, having abandoned ignorance and arousing true wisdom, where you truly understand the natural laws of how this world's functioning, then it is possible to eliminate this discontentedness. You can eliminate this discontentedness by eliminating craving, aversion, and this ignorance or unknowing of true reality. So any questions on this chapter that you guys have? I think Janae has a question online, so go ahead, ma'am.
So is the underlying tendency referring to the internal and external basis?
It's referring to the pollutions of craving, anger, and ignorance. That's the underlying tendency. So the mind in the unenlightened state is going to tend to crave, where it's longing, yearning, it's chasing after the objects of its affection, and if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it's going to have these painful feelings, and that's where aversion comes in, where the mind's pushing away. It has anger, bitterness, harshness, and hostility towards others. And then where all of this is coming from is the ignorance, the underlying tendency of ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding that the mind has. Because the mind firmly believes that it's other people who are causing you to be angry or frustrated. Until you look at this closely, you'll continue to believe that other people are causing you to be frustrated. But you can see through the teachings of the Buddha that that's not the case, that it's your own mind that's causing this. So these underlying tendencies of craving, anger, and ignorance will motivate these continuous feelings of where the mind gets happy, then it gets sad, then it gets excited, then it gets guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety, and then it gets thrilled, and then it gets upset and angry and annoyed. The mind's just going to keep doing that as long as these underlying tendencies are there. But by eliminating them, that's what's going to eliminate and end the discontentedness, by eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance. And more specifically, this refers to the 10 fetters, but here we're talking about them from a high level.
So is the internal and external basis specifically for this teaching, or is there somewhere else where that's taught?
You mean what the internal and external sense bases are, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean, Janae?
Yeah.
Yeah, what they are. He explains it at the very beginning, the very first chapter of this book, the 6 sense bases. There's a discourse where he explains, what are the 6 sense bases. And then walking through this book, you learn the internal and external sense bases. Here, we're all the way towards the end of the book. So you're getting this particular teaching, but typically someone would have already read the first several chapters.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to end here. We have a class that we teach the same thing at 9 p.m. Oh, you have a question? Yes, ma'am. If you could get a microphone. Do you have a microphone back there? Or we can send one back to you.
Hello. A question about the last chapter. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. This question is based on my own experience, and just like the example of the traveling you mentioned before. I was going to attend a meeting in the United States a few days before, and I was quite excited about this. But I knew it from the start that it's not permanent, or it's not going to happen as I want. But I prepared for the whole things, and but just a few days before, just because of the complicated situation, international situation, the trip was canceled, and I still got the feeling of frustrated or not delightful. So I think
right after this chapter, I reviewed the whole process, and I think I knew it from the start that it's not permanent and it's not going to happen as I will. But at the end, when it actually happened, I still got this frustrated feelings. Is that a normal response, or is that a better way to respond to this situation?
Yeah. So what you experienced is intellectually, you understand impermanence, that this particular trip, this meeting is impermanent and may or may not happen. But internally in the mind, you were still craving, you were still longing, yearning. This is the difference between intellectual understanding versus what the mind's actually doing. So for example, when we grew up as children, we were taught intellectually that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol, for example, but we might have still did it. Right? Because intellectually, we understood that it's unwise, but our mind had so much craving, desire, attachment, we still actually did it. We still chose to use drugs and alcohol. So it's the same thing as your mind intellectually understood that this meeting may or may not happen, but internally within your mind, there was still a longing, yearning for it that you weren't aware of. So if you train your mind through the Eightfold Path, you would be able to uncover those things and you would be able to eliminate them. So that way in the future, when you have this meeting scheduled, it's like, okay, this may or may not happen. And then when it gets canceled, you're completely fine with that. No big deal. You understand its impermanence. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, have some more questions over here.
Okay, as you mentioned before, you said I will finish my travel in May 6th, and I was very happy in this travel tourist. And I want to reserve these feelings when I finish my travel. Mm-hmm. So what should I do to keep these happiness feelings after I finish my journal?
Sure. So the happiness that you're experiencing, if it's based on the travel, it's not a permanent feeling because your travel is not permanent. So if you're basing your happiness on the travel, then when you're traveling, you'll be happy. And when you're not traveling, you won't be happy. That's the impermanent nature. That's the craving, desire, attachment. That's the clinging. So you need to get to the point where you're happy when you're at home and you're going to work each day and you're enjoying that life, but you're also completely happy when you're traveling as well. And right now, there's nothing that I can tell you that's going to instantly change that for you. You need to gradually train your mind over the course of multiple years to be able to train your mind to enjoy the travel and enjoy doing that, but then also enjoy the life that you've created at home as well. Right now, you might not have a life at home that you really enjoy. Sometimes people pick a certain job based on wanting money or a certain title or certain office, certain coworkers. And maybe what you're doing at home, maybe you don't enjoy that 100%. And that's where you are in your life right now. But if you learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment, you can get to the point where you enjoy being at home and doing your daily work just as much as you enjoy your travel. Right now, you probably can't imagine that being the case, but if you gradually train your mind, you'll be able to do that. But it's going to take you time to gradually learn and grow and develop on the path to be able to understand how to do that. So I invite you to attend this afternoon at 1 o'clock because you're going to be able to learn the very first teaching of how to do that. And then on Monday, I'm going to be teaching the entire course, which you can join here or you can join online because I live stream it. And if you can't attend live, you can watch the recordings where you can gradually learn how to train your mind to get to this point where you can be peaceful and joyful and happy no matter whether you're training or you're not. But there's nothing that's going to keep this particular feelings that you're having while you're traveling to be permanent because you're basing your happiness on an impermanent situation. So that means your happiness is impermanent too. But you can get to a point where your happiness is permanent. You just need to learn how to do that, which is going to take more than just a 5-minute exchange.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Yeah, please help yourself.
Thank you so much. And I have a question about tendency on different feelings where you're making a choice. Because when you're making a choice, you're always faced different kinds of feelings. For example, if you're making a change, you will face about feelings of frustration when you're changing your own life and expectation when you're having a new life. But my question is, how do you abandon the tendency of having different feelings while making a wise choice? That is my question. Did I make myself clear?
Sure. So it's the same answer that I just gave this gentleman, that there's a training that you need to do. It's called the Eightfold Path. And I'm going to be teaching the first step of this afternoon. And with this Eightfold Path, you gradually train your mind to not crave. Like we were talking about in the past chapter, is that as long as your mind's craving, you're longing and yearning, you're going to get happy when you get what you want, and you're going to get angry and sad and frustrated when you don't get what you want. So that frustration that you're experiencing now that is arising, and it makes it difficult for you to make a wise decision, you can get rid of that. You can get to the point where your mind can be calm and steady and stable, and you can make all wise decisions. And this is one of the reasons why the mind struggles in their day-to-day life, is because when the mind is frustrated and angry, then an individual keeps making decisions, and now it just makes it worse and worse and worse. So at this point in your understanding, the best thing you can do when you're frustrated is don't make any decisions at all. Just go put yourself in a room by yourself if that's what you need to do. Go for a walk. Go for a bicycle ride. Go do whatever you need to do. Redirect the mind. Train the mind to let go. One of the best decisions you can make is don't make any decisions at all. That's the best decision to make when your mind's angry and frustrated and agitated, because during that time, your mind is shaken up and you can't access your wisdom at that point because your mind is uncalm. That's what that frustration, agitation, and annoyance is doing, is shaking up your mind. So therefore, whenever you're trying to make a decision, you can't access your wisdom very easily. So as you're in this transition, while you're learning and growing and developing on the path, if you're noticing any agitation or frustration, just don't make any decisions at all. Just go off, take a bike ride or go for a walk or something like that. But slowly but surely, if you train your mind deeply, the way that I'm suggesting and inviting you guys to do by learning the Eightfold Path, you can get to a point where you don't have the frustration, and you'll always be able to make wise decisions in each situation. But it just takes time to gradually train the mind to that. It's not a one-day thing. It's not a 1 week or a 1 month or even a 1 year thing. It's going to take multiple years. But the thing about this is it's a permanent solution. Once you train your mind in this direction, you're going to be gradually seeing improvement to the condition of your mind all the way through. You're going to be seeing gradual improvement. And when the mind's fully transformed, it's a permanent mental state that the mind will never revert back to being angry or frustrated ever again. It's impossible for the mind to experience that once it's been fully trained. There's another question behind you over here. If you can get a mic. Yeah, if you get a mic here, that way when they're done, we'll be able to go next. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you for sharing, and it's very inspiring. So my question is that, it feels like sometimes the sense of failure that drives us to improve ourselves at what we are doing. So, for example, if you are a beginner at
your mic's impermanent. The sound went out.
Hello?
Yes. It sounds like the batteries are not quite strong. We've got some more mics, though. We can get some more back there. But I think I understand the basis of your question, but we'll let you keep describing it if you like.
So my question is that sometimes it feels like we can turn the sense of failure, the sense of dissatisfaction about yourself, into something that motivates you to become better at what you are doing right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, how can we reconcile the letting it go, just stop wanting for that permanence, and between the wanting to become a better version of ourselves.
Sure. As long as you're motivated by your cravings, desires, attachments, you can only be happy if you get what you want. And when you don't get what you want, you'll feel sad or dissatisfied or frustrated or agitated. That means your mind's going to keep going up and down and up and down. But what you can learn to do, which your mind doesn't necessarily know how to do right now, is to be motivated through wise decision making. That it's wise to do certain things in the world, and you can gradually work towards those goals, objectives, or interests without thinking about failure, right? If you have a certain craving, desire, attachment, something that you want, If you get it, you'll think that you're successful. And if you don't get it, you'll think that you have failed. And now you might feel guilty or shameful about that. That's no way to live life, because that means you're going to be going up and down and up and down. Instead, what you can do is you can understand your goal in this life is to cultivate wisdom. You need to cultivate wisdom in order to be able to become a better and better person. And in every situation, you're cultivating wisdom. So if you have a certain goal, a certain objective that you're working towards, if you accomplish that, great, you've accomplished it. But if you don't accomplish it, that's wonderful too, because you learned a lot of things along the way. But if you can only feel like you've succeeded, if you get what you want, then you're not going to be able to feel successful in all situations. You can get to a point where you're successful in all situations when you change in your mind what it means to be successful. What it means to be successful when you're pursuing a goal or objective is that you're cultivating wisdom. The cultivation of wisdom is what's going to lead to a better and better life for yourself. So even in a situation where you're ultimately not successful at your attempts to accomplish some goal, there's still success there because you've learned something in the process. So if I'm working towards a goal, objective, or interest, and I'm only 80% of the way there, I've still accomplished something very wonderful. I accomplished wisdom of how to get to 80% of this goal. And now when I look at that goal, I say, okay, well, what do I need to do here? Well, if I would like to get to this goal, I can extend my timeline and I can give myself more time. That's an option. Or I can add resources to this. I can add some kind of resource that's going to help me to get to the goal. That's a second option. Or the third option is I can look at it and say, 80% of the way, this is actually quite fine. I don't need to go 100%. I've got everything I need right here with 80% of this goal. I'm done, right? So this is a true goal, a true objective, a true interest where you're pursuing things out of wise decision making and you're not basing your feelings on whether you get that thing or not. If you're basing your feelings on whether you get that thing or not, that's not an actual goal. That's a craving, that's a desire, that's a longing, a yearning, that's a wanting, that's an expectation, that the mind is expecting something. And that is masquerading as a goal, because oftentimes people are setting goals for themselves. And then when they get it, they feel happy. And when they don't get it, they feel sad. That's not actually a goal. It's a craving, desire, attachment. And you can only be happy if you get what you want. And because of impermanence, you can't always get what you want. So you can learn how to be motivated through wise decision making, gradually work towards your goals, understanding that you're not always going to meet your goals, and that's okay. But if your ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom, no matter what, even if you get 20% or 30% of the way to your goal, you've still cultivated wisdom, and that has been a success. So one of the things you're doing on the path to enlightenment, among other things, is you're changing your perspective about how you view the world and your interaction in the world. And if you can only view your success as if you get what you want, then that means you can't be successful all the time. And your mind's going to go up and down and up and down. But you can get to the point where you change your perspective of what it means to be successful and what it means to pursue a certain objective. And now you can be successful all the time because you're cultivating wisdom and you're not forming your feelings based on whether you get this thing or not. And you can learn how to be motivated that way. Because if you're only motivated by your cravings and your wants and your desires, that will burn out. If you've ever been pursuing something really strongly because you had a real passion for it, you might have gotten a certain point in that progression and you're like, I don't even want it anymore. It's kind of like a dog or an animal chasing a rabbit or a squirrel. It catches it and it kills it, and then it gets bored with it. It doesn't even want to do anything with it because it was the chase that the animal enjoyed so much. So a human being's mind will function similarly. Even though we're not animals, we will chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. And if this chase becomes too long, eventually the person's craving will burn out and they'll get bored with it and they'll turn away from it. But when you're making wise decisions, you can pursue that thing for the rest of your life. That's why the Buddha was able to teach from the age of 35 to 80, because he never got bored with what he was doing, because he knew he was making wise decisions to share his teachings into the world. So if you have some hobby or some job or some occupation or something that you're offering to the world, if you're chasing that with craving, desire, attachment, even though it's maybe the most wonderful thing in the world, you'll eventually burn out your craving, and then you'll give up on it and you won't offer it to the world anymore. And that's not true motivation. That's craving, desire, attachment. But when you can pursue things, maybe something that you're offering the world based on wise decision making, you can do that for the rest of your life. And now you can really be beneficial to other people around you. I think I heard you. Yes, sir. I think you said that was very helpful, right? Yeah, you're all right. Yeah, if you would like to get a mic, feel free. We have plenty of mics in the bowl there. Yep. This gentleman up here in the blue jacket, I think it is. Yep.
Thanks very much for your sharing. I have a few questions. I have or asking because
I think we might need a better mic. Got some impermanence there with the microphone.
Wait. Now the questions are just surface questions. I have an underlying big question that to ask. I think I will write my underlying question to you some days after I articulate how to express. So these are just surface and technical questions that I'm going to ask. The first question is, would you turn to a later page? I remember there's a page about when there's positive feeling, we don't excite about that. And if we have painful feeling, don't feel discontent about. Thank you. It's this page. The first paragraph, when one is touched by a present feeling, and the second paragraph, first sentence, painful feeling. Your example was about our chocolate cake. It's about sensing feeling. And I would like to confirm that for the present feeling and painful feeling, is also include emotional feeling. Is that the case?
Yeah, the word emotion and feeling are essentially the same thing. They're based on some condition. That's what an unenlightened being is experiencing. It's called a conditioned feeling. That based on some condition, you are going to have a certain feeling, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. We might refer to those as emotions as well. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience conditional feelings. You'll experience unconditioned mental states where the mind will just always be happy, always be joyful. But it's not a feeling at that point. A feeling arises, it changes, and it fades away. Where these unconditioned mental states, they're permanent in the mind.
Thanks. And let me give an example. What I refer to as emotional feeling is conditional feeling. That suppose one is happy, and here the teaching is that one also don't excite about, wow, you have good feeling, you have good mood today. Or the second paragraph, if one have painful feeling, by some condition, that person feel bad mood, but don't be sorrow about you having bad mood. If I interpret in this way, is it conform with what these two paragraphs want to express, or actually, no, it's deviated?
Yeah, what the Buddha is explaining to you here is he's saying when one is touched by a pleasant feeling, this is what an unenlightened being would experience, is they would experience a arising of a pleasant feeling, happiness, excitement, elation, as a conditioned feeling. And then when they experience that, the Buddha is saying, if you don't excite in it, if you don't welcome it in and you don't remain holding on to it, then the underlying craving won't reside within one. So you won't continue to long and yearn and crave for it. So you need to be able to one of the parts of the training is when the conditioned pleasant feeling is arising, you cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. That you're not suppressing it, you're not repressing it. You're training your mind not to form that conditioned feeling. And by training your mind not to form a conditioned feeling, you can get to the point where there's unconditioned happiness. So there's conditional happiness, meaning that if this condition is met, this condition is met, this condition is met, this condition is met, then I'll be happy. That's not what you're interested in. But that's what the unenlightened mind does because of its lack of training and its lack of wisdom. What you would like to get to is where your mind is experiencing unconditioned happiness, where it's just always happy all the time. And it doesn't need any condition to be present in order for it to be happy. So if it's sunny outside, you're happy. If it's raining outside, you're happy. If it's snowing or sleeting, you can maintain your happiness because your happiness isn't based on the weather. If your mom's alive, you can be happy. But if your mom's dead, you can be happy too. You're not happy because she died. You're happy despite the fact that she has died, right? So that's where the unconditioned happiness can be in the mind. And it's the same thing that by the time you get to enlightenment, there's no more painful feelings. And there's no such thing as an unconditioned painful feeling. It just doesn't exist. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience painful feelings. But when you're touched by a painful feeling now, when you're noticing a painful feeling, you would like to cut that off and let that go. Train your mind not to do that. But that's where you guys need the full training to understand the Eightfold Path.
What is exactly the difference between cut off a feeling or cut off a thought and suppress a feeling, suppress a thought?
Yeah, so suppressing it means you're pushing it down and you're burying it, where when you're cutting it off, you're just letting it go out of the mind. You're not allowing the mind to hold on to it. Where when you're suppressing it, you're still holding on to it and you're just burying it, kind of sweeping the dirt under the carpet, so to speak. So the Buddha teaches you the life cycle that feelings take, because first, before the mind experiences a feeling, there's going to be bodily sensations. There's going to be, like, for example, with anger, there's tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. Have you experienced this? Yeah, so that's the early warning system. The mind's alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You haven't experienced the feeling of anger yet, but you're about to. This is the early warning system. So you can cut it off right there if you train your mind well enough. So that's why the meditation that we did this morning is when your mind moves off your breath, you're cutting it off and letting it go, because you're training your mind to let go, let go, let go. Right? Because the mind doesn't want to do that. In the unenlightened state, it wants to hold on. So you're training your mind to let go. So if you can get better and better through the entire training to spot these bodily sensations that are occurring, you can let it go before it becomes a feeling. So essentially, when your mind's like, hey, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. You're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Right? And now over time, when you do that more and more and more, your mind will get trained where it doesn't form feelings based on these impermanent conditions. And slowly but surely, you'll see this transformation in your mind and in your life, because things will just get better and better.
I'm just talking about my experience. When the mind is not yet so well trained, such let's go practically might turn to be push go, which the feeling will come more fierce. For my just personal experience, maybe accept the coming of the feeling are more helpful to reduce the coming of the feeling.
As long as you keep allowing your mind to get the feeling, it will never be rewired to not get it, right? So that's why the Buddha teaches you to cut off and let go at the bodily sensations. So sometimes what people are misunderstanding, I hear this in Buddhist communities all the time, they will say, when you have a feeling, observe it, welcome it, invite it in, make friends with it. That's not what the Buddha is teaching. You can see here where he says that if someone does not excite in it, does not welcome it, does not remain holding on to it, right? You're not interested in that. So what you would like to do is you would like to catch it before it becomes a feeling. But the thing is that between now and enlightenment, you're not going to be able to catch it every single time. You will experience some anger and frustration and agitation and these other discontent feelings. But if you learn the training and you apply the training, more and more you're going to catch it as a bodily sensation. And when you catch it and you cut it off before it becomes a feeling, this is rewiring your mind, essentially creating new pathways so that your mind processes the world around you differently. But what you need to be able to do is understand the problem. That's what the Buddha is helping you to see here.
I have some thoughts or further questions about that, but let's maybe I ask you in some other days. And then my second surface question would like to know is that about the sense base. The first 5 sense bases, eyes, ears, they are physical. And then the mind sense base. I'm not so sure about the word mind. It's distanced from the original language, how far the distance. If I understand the sense base of mind to be our brain or our neural system, which is also physical. Is that understanding correct, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's not true. The brain is the physical organ that is part of the body. The mind is non-physical. It's not tangible, so you can't touch it or point to it. These are two separate things. So the mind is where all your thoughts and ideas, your decision making, your perceptions, your opinions, your wisdom, all those things reside inside the mind, the non-physical thing. The organ of the brain, that's where all the chemicals and the functioning of the body is happening from within the brain. These two things are connected and they influence each other, but they're not the same thing. So the brain is one thing, the mind is something completely different. It's non-physical.
Oh, thanks. Good to know. I have that question because the other 5 sense bases, physical, eyes, ears. So just mind. So that's why I had that question. Then the third question is about intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts with terminology in these paragraphs, I suppose belongs to the mental objects.
Yes. So the word mental object is used different ways depending on what teaching the Buddha is talking about. When we talk about something called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the Buddha uses the word mental object. And what he's referring to there is what we call the 10 fetters, these 10 pollutions that the mind needs to build awareness of. You need to be aware of the symptoms of these arising of the 10 fetters. We call those mental objects. They're deeply rooted containers that are in the mind that need to be uprooted and purified out of the mind. Here in the 6 sense bases, when we talk about a mental object, we're referring to anything that's in the mind, like a thought, idea, any of these other kinds of things. These are all mental objects. Anything that's going through the mind is a mental object.
Yeah, thanks for that. And mental objects, if according to the categorization of the 5 aggregates, is the aggregate of feelings. So if the aggregate of feelings include those intrusive thoughts, I suppose that feeling perhaps different from I'm not so sure, is it different from the original language of Pali? Because thoughts and feelings, although they usually go together, but still they are different things. So maybe the original language in Pali about the aggregate of feelings, that word may be broader than the English word feeling, I suppose.
When we talk about feelings, the feeling aggregate, we're talking about conditioned feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. That's what we're talking about with the aggregate. When we talk about the 6 sense bases, if we use the word mental object, this could be related to a feeling as well, but it's described differently depending on which teaching you're talking about. You need to be able to understand the purpose of the teaching and how the Buddha is using the word. And when you understand the purpose of the teaching, then you'll understand how he's using the word. So that's why in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he's using it in one way. In the six sense basis, he's using it another way. In the five aggregates, we don't really talk about mental objects much because we're talking about them as individual things. So the feelings, the perceptions, the volitional formations, we could call all of those things mental objects, but we're splitting it out individually that way with the five aggregates because it's important to split it out.
Thanks very much. I have an underlying question, but maybe some days I will write it for you.
You're welcome
Thanks
to come. You're
very
welcome
much
to
for
come.
your sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome to come talk, or people can get help by asking questions in class by submitting on our Facebook group, and I'll answer you there. You can send me a private message, or you can come talk to me privately, and we can schedule an appointment, and I'll sit down and answer whatever questions you have.
Thanks very much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to officially end class here by just thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone online who's joined us as well. If you guys would like to learn more, as I mentioned this afternoon at 1, I'm going to be teaching an introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha course, give you guys an opportunity to learn what his teachings are, what they aren't, and his very first teaching. It's a great place to start. Tomorrow, we're going to be in chapter 24 of our book, which is titled Misunderstandings of the Teachings of the Buddha, because depending on where you've been in your life, you might have been exposed to some of these misunderstandings, and it's helpful for you to be able to see what those misunderstandings are. And then on Monday, I'm going to start a course where over 5 days, I'm going to help you to establish a foundation in the teachings of the Buddha. So you're welcome to attend any of this here or online. You can attend as well. So whatever you guys decide to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee krap, sawadee krap, sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.